Marina froze on the doorstep when she heard a child's voice. Her heart skipped a beat. The little boy had just called the unfamiliar doctor Daddy's second wife. Her throat went dry, and her fingers tightened around the strap of her medical bag until her knuckles turned white. For a moment, Marina thought she must have misheard, or maybe she had the wrong address. But no, the emergency call had been for this exact place, 7 Maple Street. And now, standing in the doorway, was a blond boy of about 5, looking up at her with serious eyes. Marina forced herself to take a step forward, her legs unsteady. "Hello, I'm an emergency doctor." "Did one of the adults call?" she asked evenly, masking the wave of emotion inside her. The boy nodded right away and opened the door wider to let her in. A woman, presumably the child's mother, appeared behind him. Her eyes were full of worry as she motioned Marina inside. "Please, hurry. He's in the bedroom, he's unconscious." Marina stepped into the house, and the warm air hit her after the November chill outside. But a shiver still ran down her spine, and a heavy tightness squeezed her chest. It felt like something irreversible was about to happen. He must have just misspoken, she told herself, trying to push away the creeping dread. But with each word from the unfamiliar woman, the unthinkable seemed more and more real. The woman led her quickly through a narrow hallway. "My husband suddenly got sick. He just got back from his shift, and out of nowhere, this happened. I was scared, I called the ambulance right away." Marina moved like she was in a fog, her voice automatic as she asked. "How old is he? Any previous complaints? What's his name?" "Alexander, 42. He's never had anything like this before," the woman replied, but Marina barely registered the words. Everything felt surreal. A shift, 42, and even the same name. No, this can't be. There are thousands of men that age working shifts, she tried to reassure herself. It has to be someone else. It must be someone else. Seconds later, she stepped into the bedroom, and stopped cold. On a worn-out couch, under a plaid blanket, lay a man. His face was pale, his eyes shut, his breathing shallow. But Marina recognized him instantly. Those familiar features. It was Alexander. Her husband. The same husband who had supposedly left recently for a job. The same one who had called her just yesterday, saying he was on shift. Marina's world shattered in an instant. Everything inside her collapsed, as if the ground had been pulled out from under her. Alex, the name slipped from her lips before she could stop herself. The woman beside her turned, surprised. "You know him?" Hearing her voice, the man opened his eyes slightly. For a brief moment, their eyes met. Marina felt her heart pounding in her throat, her chest burning with a mix of fury and devastation. Alexander had recognized her. His eyes widened in horror. He struggled to sit up, gasping for air. "Ma! Marina," he gasped hoarsely. Her name dropped into the silence like a thunderclap. The young woman who had been leaning over her sick husband gasped and recoiled. "Marina? What does that mean? Who are you to him?" she asked, bewildered, her eyes darting between the man and the doctor. The little boy stood frozen in the corner, clutching a worn-out teddy bear to his chest, his face pale with fear. Marina knew that in a few seconds, all hell would break loose. But there was no time for drama now. A man was lying in bed, possibly suffering a heart attack, and every minute lost could cost him his life, bitter as that truth was. Marina took a deep breath, fighting the tremor in her limbs. "I'm a doctor first. I need to do my job," she told herself sharply, trying to stay in control. 20 years ago, she had taken an oath, to help people, no matter the circumstances. As much as her heart screamed in pain and betrayal, duty came first. "We'll talk about this later. Right now, saving his life is the priority," she said firmly, locking eyes with the confused woman. The woman bit her lip and nodded fearfully while Alexander, eyes wide, continued to gasp for air. Marina dropped to her knees beside the couch and checked his pulse. His heart was racing, irregular. She opened her bag, pulled out the blood pressure monitor, and quickly took a reading. High, but manageable. I'll give him an injection, it'll help, she said briskly, pulling out a syringe and medication. Her hands trembled slightly as she prepared the shot, but her voice remained cool and professional. Alexander managed to croak. I'm fine. I'm feeling better. He made a feeble attempt to get up, as if he could escape the situation, but he didn't have the strength. Marina instinctively placed a firm hand on his shoulder. Don't move. You might lose consciousness again. You need to rest. She swabbed his arm with alcohol and gave him the injection. He winced and turned his head away. The little boy's eyes filled with tears as he watched the needle go into his father's arm. Marina turned gently toward him. Don't be scared, sweetheart. Your dad will feel better soon. Saying that nearly made her choke. The word dad burned on her tongue. The medicine worked quickly. Alexander's breathing calmed, color returned to his cheeks. Within minutes, he was able to sit up, leaning against the back of the couch. An uneasy silence fell over the room. The other woman, his second wife, as it now seemed, nervously touched Marina's elbow. Thank you so much. Is he going to be okay? Her voice trembled. Maybe she still didn't realize who Marina truly was. Marina disposed of the used syringe and replied curtly. He's stable now. But he needs to see a cardiologist. Get him to the hospital in the next few days and have an EKG done. She stood up, gathering her things. Her whole body ached with tension. All she wanted was to get out of this deceptively cozy house where every piece of furniture seemed to whisper betrayal. But just as she stepped toward the door, Alexander's raspy voice stopped her. Marina, wait. He looked pale again, staring up at her like a guilty man caught red-handed. Marina stood frozen, clutching her medical bag to her chest, saying nothing. Her eyes burned with tears, but she wouldn't let them fall, not here, not in a stranger's home. The boy, Alexander's son, was still huddled in the corner of the room, and his mother stood nearby, nervously fidgeting with the edge of her handkerchief. At last, the woman spoke in a shaky voice. I'm sorry. I don't understand. Do you know my husband? Marina met her confused gaze. There was fear in the woman's eyes, the fear of someone suddenly unsure if she knew the father of her child at all. For a fleeting moment, Marina felt sorry for her. She was just another victim of his lies. Without answering, Marina looked away and stepped out of the bedroom. I need to finish the paperwork for the call, she said quietly. Let's go into another room. Alexander's wife, his second wife, followed her into the hallway. The boy remained sitting by his father's side. In the narrow corridor, Marina leaned against the cold wall and finally raised her eyes to the anxious woman. She looked to be in her 30s, maybe a little younger than Marina herself. Her face was ghostly pale. You really know him? Why did he say your name? The woman asked again, her voice hoarse. My God, she still doesn't know. Marina's heart pounded with a storm of emotions, pain, jealousy, and a strange sense of clarity. So Alexander had been living a double life, hiding it from everyone. Each of them believed they were his only one. Well, not anymore. My name is Marina, she said slowly, her voice growing steadier with every word, and I am Alexander's legal wife. The very man you also, apparently, call your husband. The handkerchief slipped from the woman's fingers. Her eyes widened in horror. For a few moments, there was nothing but silence, the ticking of the clock and the sound of slow footsteps. It seemed Alexander, fighting his weakness, was making his way toward them from the bedroom. The woman clutched her chest as if trying to hold her heart together. That can't be true. He told me he'd been alone for years, that his only ex-wife had died, she whispered through sobs. Marina let out a bitter laugh. Dead? How convenient for him. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wiped them away. As you can see, I'm very much alive and standing, she said. Just then, Alexander appeared in the doorway. He was gripping the frame, pale and shaky, but defiant. Marina, please. Stop. Don't do this, he mumbled, stumbling over his words. The charming double-lifer looked anything but brave now. Sweat beaded on his forehead, and his lips were trembling. But Marina only gripped her bag tighter and stepped closer. For months, she had lived with unease, with creeping suspicions she'd been too afraid to face. And now the truth was out, ugly and cruel, but real. She was done being silent. Don't. No, I think I've had enough lies, she said. Her voice didn't shake anymore. Each word rang out like a taut wire snapping. A month ago, my husband, this very man, left for a work shift. And now I find him here, with another family. Tell me, do you really expect me to stay quiet? Her words hit Alexander like a whip. He flinched, tried to speak, but only stammered. I can explain. His second wife stood motionless, like a statue. Tears streamed down her cheeks. And the brave liar, he sank heavily onto a chair by the wall, no longer able to stand. Marina felt she couldn't stay in that house another second. The air was too thick, the walls too close. They seemed to crush her. All your explanations, save them for the lawyer, she said almost calmly. I'm leaving. She yanked open the front door, letting in a blast of icy air. Alexander looked up. Marina, wait, we should talk. But the words hung in the air, unfinished. Marina stepped across the threshold. Her face was stone, locked in a battle to hold back the rage and humiliation. Yes, it hurts, she thought. But at least I won't live in lies anymore. Behind her, she could hear crying. His other wife had likely collapsed to the floor, sobbing. But Marina couldn't go back to comfort her. She could barely hold herself together. And besides, it wasn't her problem anymore. She had done everything she needed, as a doctor. But as a woman, she owed them nothing. The cold wind hit her flushed face like a slap. Marina began to shiver, her body trembling as if recovering from a high fever. The ambulance was waiting down the street. Her partner, the elderly driver Nicholas, leaned out of the cab, looking worried. Marina, everything all right in there? She didn't answer. Her legs barely moving, she made her way to the vehicle. As soon as she climbed into the cab, the worn leather seat creaked under her weight, and she slumped back, exhausted. Drive, she whispered, her voice hoarse. Nicholas gave her a puzzled look as he started the engine. Normally so talkative, she was now pale and silent. But he didn't push, it was clear something was wrong. As they pulled away, Marina stared out the window, eyes unfocused. Her body shook. Marina, are you okay? What happened back there? He asked quietly, stealing glances at her. She looked like a shadow of herself. Her arms clutched the medical bag tightly, her lips pressed shut, and silent tears streamed down her cheeks. She shook her head, wiping the salty trails away. I'm fine, Nick. Let's just get back to base. I need to file the report. But Nicholas didn't budge. He pulled over to the side of the road, frowning. Nope. Don't lie to me. I've known you too long. I can't leave you alone like this. You look like your whole world just collapsed. Marina let out a choking sob and covered her face with her hands. The silence said everything. Nicholas let out a low whistle. No way. You're telling me that was your man lying in there? The guess struck her right in the chest. Marina nodded, trying to hold back the sobs racking her body. The tears came again, hot, bitter, and unstoppable, like an autumn storm. It felt like she needed to cry it all out, completely. Maybe then she could breathe again. Nicholas muttered a curse under his breath and gently patted her shoulder. Damn him. And that woman too. It's not her fault, Marina whispered suddenly, lowering her hands. Her tears slowed, giving way to emptiness. Nicholas shook his head. Man, Alex. What a bastard. He started the engine again. They drove in silence, the headlights illuminating wet tree trunks in the darkness. Gradually, Marina's breathing steadied. She leaned her forehead against the cold window, feeling hollow, like something inside had burned away. But in that emptiness, a tiny seed of resolve remained. She wouldn't go on like this. Over the years of marriage, she had learned to forgive Alexander, for being away so often, for his distant messages from far-off assignments, for his coldness over the phone. She blamed the distance, the stress, even herself for not giving him children. God hadn't granted them that. And all this time, he hadn't been lonely, he had built himself a second life. And buried her alive in his lies. Enough. By the time they reached the station, Marina was calm. Thanks, Nick. I'm going, she said softly, and before he could protest, she closed the door behind her. Nicholas wanted to walk her to her place. She lived in the building next door, on the second floor, but she waved him off, claiming she was just tired. Once alone in her quiet apartment, she didn't even turn on the lights. The moonlight spilling through the window was enough. In the dim room, her eyes landed on a framed photo on the nightstand, her and Alexander, years ago, happy, holding each other by the sea. Marina picked up the frame with trembling hands. The glass was cracked. And suddenly, she saw it clearly, their happiness had shattered just like that glass. She didn't scream, didn't cry, there were no more tears left. Her hands acted on their own. She tossed the photo into the trash. A strange relief followed. She knew hard conversations were ahead, with Alexander, maybe even with his new family. But there was no turning back. Marina had made her choice. She was no longer his wife. She was free. That night, Marina barely slept. Her mind replayed everything. Despite the pain, she knew she had to stay calm and rational. The next morning, she filed for divorce. A couple of weeks later, it was finalized. She never saw Alexander again. He received the notice from the lawyer and, apparently, didn't dare to call or meet her. When she packed up his remaining things into a box, she didn't cry. Her soul felt empty, but somewhere deep inside, a small, steady light was burning. Everything would be okay. A month later, Alexander tried to come back. He asked to meet, begged for forgiveness, but Marina sent word through mutual acquaintances, she didn't want to see the traitor. She later heard that his second wife had kicked him out too after learning the whole truth. He ended up alone. As for Marina, she quietly started building a new life. She didn't look back. She poured herself into her work, saving lives, just like always. And this time, she did it without looking over her shoulder. Her loneliness no longer weighed her down. She had colleagues, friends, and grateful patients by her side. Sometimes in the evenings, she would think back to that terrible night, and wonder why the little boy had called her that. Maybe it was just a child's intuition, that uncanny sense kids have that lets them see things adults miss. Or maybe Alexander had slipped up at some point, cracked under the pressure of his secret. Living with a lie that heavy must take its toll. Maybe, during a careless moment or in a moment of weakness, he had let the truth slip. And the boy had remembered. She often felt a pang of sorrow, for the child, for the whole situation. But then she'd take a deep breath and let the past go, peacefully. Happiness will come again, Marina would tell herself, brewing a cup of tea by the window. And she truly believed it. A calm life, free of lies and fear, was still ahead of her. She was no longer the woman who cried in silence. She was strong now. Proud. Marina, an incredible doctor and a